Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 at 1:30. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We did. Okay, super. Okay, and on to number 3. Is there anybody with public comment? I know we don't have anyone online. No? Okay, moving on. Again, there we go. I gotta get used to these buttons up here. We need a motion to approve the minutes from December 10th. Jason? Second, Deb. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passed. Okay, policy issues, discussion and potential committee determination. None. Number 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. 6A, discussion and possible action by public safety. I don't think there's anything there. And then 6B, discussion and possible action by public safety to forward to the county board for consideration. 6B1, abolish 1.0 FTE administrative coordinator position and create a 1.0 FTE human resources specialist position in the sheriff's office.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start, and then if you have any substantive questions between the Sheriff's Office and myself, we can take those on. But just kind of laying the framework for why is this before you today. Simply put, while this is largely an administrative, what you might otherwise consider an administrative decision, your ordinances specifically require that anytime there's a creation of a new position, that it has to go through a set process. And specifically, that is section 4.20 of your ordinances. And it requires that process to include first review by myself and the HR director, but then also provided that administration supports the new position request, that it goes through the standing committee of jurisdiction, this committee, also HR, finance, and property, and ultimately the full board. So essentially what this proposal is for you, it's not a net change in full-time equivalent allocation. It's simply changing an existing administrative coordinator position within the sheriff's office to another position, still within the sheriff's office, but it's an HR specialist position. The strategy or rationale underlying that change is as set forth in the accompanying documents. The work within the sheriff's office allows for, with some vacancy, they considered how best to move forward, considering potential reorganization and shuffling of duties. And there's enough, what I'll call HR related or even HR adjacent work within that sheriff's office. They are, as you know, our largest department with just shy of 200 full-time equivalent staff. So they do require a great deal of interaction with HR. So we saw an opportunity to create a specialist position within the sheriff's office through the kind of pooling or consolidation of those HR related and HR adjacent duties, which we think will first and foremost better serve the sheriff's office, but also will give better consistency with our HR department to ensure that they really understand what's going on within the day-to-day functioning of that sheriff's office. So that's the strategy. It may sound familiar. That's very much the strategy that we're using to centralize finance professionals across the county. I've talked about that before with how Marathon County has historically had a decentralized finance department. I think in some instances or in some ways, our HR approach is somewhat similar. Not to the same extent, but similar. So we're trying to identify opportunities, particularly in our large departments, where we can consolidate some of those functions to make sure that we really get somebody with that HR background that will, again, first and foremost, make sure that the sheriff's office continues to receive a high level of service, but also allows us to kind of broaden the reach of HR across the county and ensure the consistency of that HR service we're delivering. So in terms of next steps, if this is something, certainly if you have questions, we'll answer those, but the next place for this consideration to go is ultimately to HR Finance and Property, but it does also have to go to the full board. It's already on the HR Finance and Property agenda. In terms of cost, there is not an anticipated increase cost based on the fact that we have, as I said before, had some vacancy in that position, so it's currently vacant. The incumbent that had been in that position was at a point through our wage system that we anticipate the new individual starting to actually be below that cost. But all that said, if you have any questions, myself, Sheriff Billup, or Chief Deputy Milhausen should be able to answer those.
Does anyone have some questions? The only one I had was the financial impact. You answered that. Okay, if there aren't any questions, can we get a motion, please? Tim makes the motion, Jason seconds it. And this will be are we advancing this to HR in the motion or just approving it?
If you make a recommendation to move forward in accordance with your process, I think that covers both.
Okay. Got that? All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed. Okay, we'll go on to 6B2, Marathon County Assembly's ordinance. And Shad?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm not going to go through the presentation that we gave the last time. I'm just going to go through a few highlights here. So 12.04, the Assembly's ordinance, it does currently exist. It was placed on the administrator's work plan to kind of relook at the ordinance because the one on the books had some constitutional concerns. So we did put a work group together. It was created to analyze and develop that draft. Over the past year and a half, we did develop that draft. We also engaged with various groups such as the Steam Show, Balloon Fest, Dairy Breakfast, along with outreach to towns to gain feedback. Some of the top concerns that came up were in regard to the security, the threshold of the ordinance, implementation of the ordinance, and town input associated with those assemblies. So we did take all that information and compile it into this draft that is in front of you. The draft in the packet that you have in your packet does also contain a couple edits that the Environmental Resource Committee, as long as infrastructure, chose to move forward to the county board. Those are in relation to the number of individuals or the threshold. So ERC and infrastructure suggested 5,000 instead of 3,000 being the number of individuals of attendees that would trigger this ordinance. As well as we did clean up the parking. The parking that was found in the ordinance, you can see it's crossed off in there in the draft. Essentially, it was found to be a little bit too prescriptive. So it was just an amendment to that parking area. So essentially, I know this has been in front of this committee a couple times, but the possible actions this committee could take would be to recommend to move forward with ERC and infrastructure's recommended changes, recommend to move forward to county board without their changes, move an ordinance forward with different suggestions, or choose not to send forward. Since ERC and infrastructure did choose to move this forward, it will be heard by the full county board as well. But I just wanted to kind of lay those out for you, and the decision essentially is up to the board. I don't know if Administrator Leonard or anybody has anybody else or anything else they wanted to add.
Just for those, if you didn't watch the ERC or infrastructure meetings, that move of the threshold from 3,000 to 5,000, I think this is my characterization, but it was in response to some of the concerns that were specifically raised by the coalition of dairy breakfasts. Generally, the feedback they gave was that they're all under the 3,000 threshold right now, but I think if things continue and they grow and they're optimistic about growth, that they will start to get up to that 3,000 person threshold. So after a fair amount of discussion and consideration, the idea was let's move that, and the recommendation was to move that to 5,000, which is actually consistent with the correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the state of Wisconsin emergency management. Is it mass casualty threshold? So mass casualty planning threshold. So that was their change relative to the threshold, and Shad did a nice job of kind of explaining the parking piece. The importance, again, of this ordinance is to address those constitutional concerns. And if our parking requirement was too specific or overly prescriptive, there could be concern that it unnecessarily or unduly infringes upon the right to assembly.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not going to, I understand the reasoning why you're doing it and all that, but I'm still not going to support it because I look at it as it's infringement on the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, abridging of freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So I'm not going to support it, but I understand exactly why they want to do it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Out of curiosity, like the local municipalities, what do they have for the number of people that are able to attend before they have to get permits?
Are you referring to what
Well,
this
like
this
what-
ordinance?
Yeah, with that, because this ordinance only affects towns, so villages must have their own.
Yeah, villages have the ability to have their own ordinance such as this, and that number would be set by the village. So I'm assuming it's village dependent, depending what village you're in, they can choose a different threshold.
Okay, all right, never mind. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, if there's no more discussion, are we referring this to the county board from now? Are we done with all the committees?
You can be, yes. So ERC and infrastructure both referred this to the county board. So that would be one of the actions you can take today. You can refer it to the county board with the proposed changes from those two committees. You can refer it without the changes. You could recommend repealing the ordinance, or you could not take any action. The world is your oyster, as I said at infrastructure.
Well, I know that this group had been together for a long time and did a lot of work on this, so this final tweaking really made a big difference. You have something, Jason?
Were there any concerns raised by ERC, or I did not see the video, ERC or infrastructure, that we aren't aware of?
My estimation is that they were all addressed in the changes that were recommended. I think that's a fair
understand as
characterization.
well.
Okay, any more discussion? Oh, sorry, I can't see you over the screen.
I would just make the point that ERC and the Infrastructure Committee unanimously moved it forward to the full board after the amendments that they were considered.
All right, thank you. So we will need a motion to move this forward to the county board with the changes that were made? Okay. Okay, thank you, Jason. A second, Al? Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's passed. Okay. Number 7, educational presentations and committee discussion. A, Justice Assistance Grant, JAG grant update. Is that Ruth or is that? Oh, okay.
Thank you,
Bill?
Madam Chair. So the JAG grant is a grant that the Sheriff's Office has received for a number of years. Once again, we received, and I guess I overlooked the agenda, I can't recall the exact amount this year. But the paperwork already came in, and Chair Gibbs has already signed that for acceptance. We had a short window to get that signed. What we do now with that money is it's split between us and Wausau PD to cover expenses with regards to the drug task force and CDAG. So this isn't anything new, but and like I said, I want to say roughly $17,000. I don't have the exact amount before me.
Okay. Oh, Deb, go ahead.
What exactly is, I'm trying to remember what you said, drug enforcement?
Yeah, so the task force, so CDAG is was what was called the task force before it became the Central Wisconsin Narcotics Task Force, combining with the FBI. So yeah, it's a part of the drug task force. That's on behalf of them. That's who wrote the grant, and we get the money for that. So for different, basically, I think it splits with us in Wausau because they have staff assigned to that as well.
What exactly does the drug task force do?
So they go out and enforce narcotics related cases. They build cases against narcotic trafficking use. They assist whenever there's a narcotics overdose death. They get involved in those. But right now we're combined, our unit is combined with multiple municipalities throughout central Wisconsin, and the FBI is also run out of our office in the basement here. And they travel throughout the region and build bigger and larger cases in the realm of narcotics enforcement. That's their primary function. A lot of them right now are very large, very large conspiracy type cases that they build, that myself and the sheriff were in that task force when it was called SIU, Special Investigative Unit. So it's grown into something much bigger. It was a 4-man unit back then. Now there's, I want to say 11 or 12 assigned to that unit. And they've making a very, very big impact in our community with high level dealers, not just street level users and dealers. And that amount, $18,177.
So these people are actually out in the field on the task force, many of them?
Correct.
Great, okay.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
really-
that's their 100% their primary focus. That is their job as drug task force. Yep.
So if my memory serves me correct, before that, we couldn't go across county lines to do stuff? Am I wrong?
Yes and no. It makes it a lot easier now with the FBI because the people that we have assigned there have the FBI credentials, so that they now don't have to get mutual aid from counties that we may be going into. But yeah, it definitely opens things wide open for us now. And not only with being able to conduct investigations, but when it comes to the resources, the FBI gives us a lot of resources that we didn't have access to prior to that. And they've been a tremendous partner, and we have partner agencies from surrounding counties, municipalities, things like that. So that deconfliction and assistance in the other jurisdictions, now that it's one central task force, really has opened up opportunities.
So this goes across state lines too with the FBI?
Yeah, we certainly have. We've worked with our connection in-house with the FBI. It makes that transition a lot smoother. We've worked a large case back and forth from the Arizona area. Matter of fact, today our task force members are down in Milwaukee working a case as we speak. So yeah, they end up traveling quite a bit. And those are cases that have direct impact to central Wisconsin. They're not just down in Milwaukee doing Milwaukee local business. They have ties to our community. These people are dealing drugs in our community, but they're going to where they have to build those cases.
Thank you. Lance?
If I could add one thing, like the chief deputy referenced, that unit has really grown. That work has grown, since I was down in the DA's office handling those drug cases as well. I would say a lot of the nice thing as well with that stronger tie into the federal government is the opportunity for prosecution to actually take place through the federal court system. The being potentially indicted is a very powerful thing in the law enforcement and prosecution world. So it's nice to have that complement of what we have locally for street level prosecution, I'll say, which still remains a part of what the sheriff's office and all the municipal police departments do, but really the opportunity to engage with other partners to work cases back to back to more of a source prosecution to really stop the distribution or address the impact the distribution, and the ability to take those cases federal has been certainly it was when I was in the prosecution office in the DA's office. That was a nice tool to have, and it's certainly expanded with the changes we made to that unit.
Just briefly, if you watched the news yesterday, and I'm seeing it places today, the U.S. Attorney's Office just put out a press release about a major trafficking case that came out of Wausau, and they've got a list of all of the different defendants in the case, and it was all done federally. So major narcotics cases that are occurring right here in Marathon County are handled by that team. Oh, and yeah, there's another piece of this, which is the federal forfeiture system is a lot easier to navigate when you've got federal prosecutors. So if they're obtaining gain through their illegal activities, we have the ability through the federal system to seize those assets. And then depending upon how it works, it's not always guaranteed, some of those assets can come back to Marathon County, be put back into the investigations in order to continue doing those types of investigations, thereby taking strain off of our levy.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? So this is just educational, right? Okay. All right, moving on. Next meeting date, time, announcements, and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. Our next meeting is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 at 1:30, and we need number 9. Move to adjourn. Al, second. Jason, all in favor? Aye.